The first time I saw Eve move, she wasn't supposed to. It was 3:17 in the morning, and I was half asleep on the couch, watching the flicker of the baby monitor screen. Eve's crib sat in the middle of her soft pink nursery upstairs, bathed in the glow of the nightlight shaped like a moon. She'd been asleep for hours, still peaceful. Then the monitor crackled. A whisper, faint but sharp enough to freeze me mid-breath. "Mommy." I sat up, blinking at the screen. Eve's crib was empty. The blanket was crumpled, her stuffed bear lying face down, but my daughter, my 6-year-old Eve, wasn't there. My heart stopped. I dropped the remote and ran upstairs, calling her name. "Eve, sweetheart, where are you?" My bare feet slapped against the cold wood. The door to her room was open, the nightlight still glowing. And then I saw it. She was standing in the corner. Her back faced me, her hair hanging loose over her shoulders, one hand twitching at her side. I could see her tiny chest moving, slow and uneven. I took a careful step closer, whispering, "Baby, what are you doing up?" Eve didn't move. "Eve." That's when she turned her head, just her head, and her eyes weren't her eyes anymore. They were wide and hollow, completely black. And then, in a voice that was both hers and something else entirely, she whispered again, "I'm not Eve." The lights flickered, and she smiled. "My name is Sarah, and 3 weeks before that night, everything in my life was normal. I was a single mom trying to make things work after my husband's sudden passing in a car accident last spring. Eve was all I had left, and she was my reason to keep breathing. We'd just moved into a smaller house on the edge of town, a quiet neighborhood surrounded by pine trees and silence. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful, or so I thought. Eve had always been a bright, curious kid. She loved drawing, her favorite color was blue, and she had this way of making friends with anything, even her toys. But after we moved into the new house, something changed. It started small. She began talking to someone when she was alone. At first, I thought it was just an imaginary friend. Lots of kids have those. But then, the conversations became longer. Stranger. I'd hear her whispering through the door late at night, her voice soft and happy like she was talking to someone who could actually respond. When I'd walk in, she'd stop instantly and just stare at me. Once I asked, "Who were you talking to, sweetie?" She smiled, her dimples showing. "Eve." I laughed. "You mean yourself?" She shook her head slowly. "No, the other Eve. It should have been funny. It should have been the kind of thing you tell your friends and laugh about over coffee." But the way she said it, so certain, so calm, made the back of my neck prickle. Still, I brushed it off. Kids imagine things all the time, right? A few days later, Eve started drawing pictures. At first, they were normal, houses, flowers, our cat Milo. But soon, her drawings began to change. She drew 2 little girls who looked exactly the same, standing side by side. One was smiling, holding a red balloon. The other was frowning, her hands covered in black scribbles. When I asked which one was her, Eve said, "Both." After that, she began refusing to sleep in her bed. She said the other Eve liked to watch her from under it. I checked, of course. Every time. There was never anything there, just her stuffed animals and dust. But one night, when I knelt down to prove it, the temperature under the bed dropped instantly. My breath came out white. And then I heard it. A faint giggle. Not Eve's voice. Deeper. Rougher. I jerked back, bumping my head on the bed frame. Eve was standing by the door, smiling. She says, "Hi, Mommy." That night, I let her sleep in my room. 2 weeks later, things got worse. Every clock in the house began stopping at 3:17 a.m., the same time I'd later see Eve move on the monitor. My phone alarm, the oven clock, even my watch, they'd all freeze for a few seconds, then resume like nothing happened. One night, I woke up and saw Eve sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the doorway. "Can't sleep," I whispered. She didn't answer. She just pointed. And when I looked toward the door, the hallway was pitch black. But something was there. I could hear slow, dragging footsteps moving closer. I turned on the lamp. The light flickered, hummed, and then nothing. Total darkness. When it came back on, Eve was gone. I searched the house for her, panic rising with every step. The air felt heavier than before, thick and buzzing like the moment before a thunderstorm. Then I found her in the living room, standing in front of the big mirror above the fireplace. She wasn't moving. Her reflection, though, was smiling. I screamed her name, but before I could reach her, her reflection tilted its head and whispered something. It wasn't loud enough for me to hear, but I saw her lips move. "Let me out." Eve blinked, stumbled backward, and started crying. She didn't remember a thing. After that night, I covered every mirror in the house. But it didn't help. The more I tried to keep Eve safe, the stronger whatever this was seemed to get. Doors opened on their own. The baby monitor caught static-filled whispers. Sometimes, I'd wake up to find Eve standing by my bed, staring at me in the dark. Once, when I asked her what she was doing, she said, "I'm waiting for her to wake up." Who? Eve. I didn't ask again. Then came the night everything broke. It started with laughter on the monitor, 2 voices this time. Both were hers. When I ran upstairs, I found her door wide open, the room colder than outside. The curtains moved even though the windows were closed. And in the middle of the room, the 2 versions of my daughter stood face to face. One in her nightgown, shaking. The other, dirt smeared across her cheeks, eyes like black ink, smiling too wide. I froze. The dark one looked at me and whispered, "You shouldn't have named her Eve." The lights burst, glass raining down, and I heard a sound that didn't belong in this world. A scream that echoed from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then everything went dark. When the lights came back on, only one Eve was standing. She turned toward me, her face calm, her eyes soft and innocent again. "Mommy," she said sweetly, "can I go play now?" But I couldn't answer. Because behind her, in the reflection of the broken mirror on the wall, I saw the other Eve smiling back. And she mouthed the words, "She's not yours anymore." For days after that night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light sent my heart racing. I couldn't stop replaying it. That moment when Eve stood in the middle of her room with another version of herself. That thing looked at me like it knew me, like it had been waiting for that exact night. I told myself I must have imagined it, that it was stress, grief, exhaustion. Anything but real. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something came into our lives that night, and it didn't leave. The morning after, Eve acted as if nothing had happened. She hummed while eating her cereal, feet swinging off the kitchen stool, milk dripping down her chin. "Did you sleep well?" I asked, trying to sound calm. She nodded, smiling. The other Eve said I was good last night. My spoon froze halfway to my mouth. "What?" She looked up, blinking. "She said I can stay." My stomach turned. "Stay where, honey?" Eve tilted her head, as if listening to something far away. Then she grinned. "Here. In your house." Before I could ask more, the front door rattled. Once. Twice. Like someone was testing it from the outside. I jumped up, heart pounding, and ran to check, but no one was there. The driveway was empty, the air outside still. Only the faint sound of wind moving through the trees. When I turned back, Eve was standing right behind me, holding her teddy bear by the arm. "She said she's almost ready," she whispered. "Who's ready?" Her eyes went distant again. The other Eve. That evening, I called my sister Lily. She lived an hour away, and she was the only one who knew how bad things had gotten since the move. "Sarah, you sound awful," she said over the phone. "You need to get out of that house for a few days. Come stay with me." "I can't," I said, glancing at the hallway where Eve's toys were scattered. "Eve won't go." "What do you mean, won't go?" "She says her friend will be lonely if she leaves." Lily sighed. "It's just her imagination, Sar. She's been through a lot. You both have. It's probably grief." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But that night, I heard Eve whispering again, not playful this time. Desperate. Through her door, I could make out fragments of her words. "No, I don't want to. Mommy won't like that." And then a pause. Then a reply. A second voice, low, rasping, like dry leaves moving over gravel. "Yes, you do." I froze outside her door, every instinct screaming to open it. But I didn't. I just stood there, listening, my hand trembling on the doorknob. The whispering stopped. Then, from inside, Eve said softly, "Okay." I finally pushed the door open, and she was sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring at the wall. There were words written on it. Tiny handprints in what looked like black paint surrounded a single sentence. "Eve was never yours." The next day, I tried to take her to a therapist. We barely made it 10 minutes down the road before Eve started screaming in the back seat, clutching her head. "Stop the car," she cried. "She's mad. She doesn't want to go." I swerved to the side of the road, heart hammering. "Who doesn't want to go?" She lifted her tear-streaked face, and her voice changed, deep, hollow, unnatural. "Eve." Her eyes rolled back. She started to choke, gasping for air. I reached back, shaking her shoulders. Eve, talk to me." Then, just as suddenly, she stopped, blinked, and smiled. "Mommy," she said sweetly, like nothing had happened. "Can we go home now?" I drove back in silence, afraid to even look at her. That night, I locked all the doors and windows. I kept every light on. At 3:17 a.m., the power went out. The entire house plunged into darkness. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand, flicked it on, and crept down the hallway to Eve's room. The air was freezing, the kind of cold that hurt to breathe. My breath came out in visible clouds. When I opened her door, she wasn't in her bed, but the window was open, and in the middle of the room stood her teddy bear, its head turned toward the door, its button eyes glowing faintly red. Then, from behind me, a voice whispered, "She's with me now." I spun around, and there she was. Eve, or whatever was pretending to be her, stood in the doorway, her hair hanging wet, her skin pale like she'd been underwater. Her nightgown clung to her like it was soaked in something dark. Her eyes were pitch black again. I backed away, heart thundering. "Eve, please, it's Mommy. Come here, baby." She tilted her head, and a slow, cold smile spread across her face. "Mommy's gone," she whispered. Then she took a step forward, and the floor creaked under her bare feet. Another step, and another. I raised the flashlight, shining it directly on her. For just a moment, I saw something move beneath her skin, like shadows writhing just below the surface. I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. "Stay away from me." She stopped. Then her voice came again, two voices this time. One soft, one growling beneath it. "You should have never let her out." The walls began to shake. The mirror over her dresser shattered, glass flying across the room. The stuffed bear burst open, black dust spilling from inside instead of stuffing. And Eve, or the thing that wore her face, lunged. I screamed and slammed the door, locking it, my hands shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I could hear her pounding from the other side, the doorknob rattling violently. Then silence. For a few seconds, I thought it was over. But when I turned toward the hallway, I saw something scrawled on the wall in that same black handprint ink. "Eve is born again." It's been 3 days since that night. Eve's gone. No trace. The police think she wandered off, but they don't know what I saw. Every night at exactly 3:17, I hear knocking at the front door. 3 knocks. Slow. Even. When I look through the peephole, there's no one there. But sometimes I find small wet footprints on the porch, the size of my daughter's. Last night, though, I saw something new. As I walked past the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of movement. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. And behind it, just barely visible in the glass, stood a little girl in a white nightgown, holding a teddy bear by its arm. Her voice came faintly through the mirror. "Mommy, can I come back inside?" I ran, but as I did, I heard her whisper, close, right behind my ear this time. "You let me out once." A pause. "Now it's your turn."